This is Cemeteries of DeKalb, and today I'm talking to Jeff Cook,
Yep.
who is co-owner
Mhm.
of the Sacred Hope Monument Company,
Yep.
co-owner with his daughter Daisy,
Yep. Yep.
and we're here at Jenkins Cemetery, which was neglected, as many cemeteries were. And this one, fortunately, is being restored
Yep.
thanks to you
Mhm.
and your daughter
Yep.
restoring the stones.
Yep. Yep. Mary and Mary Deal, our county historian, she's kind of led the project. So
Mhm.
she's helped get the funding and stuff and got the township trustee and their boards involved. And so it's been kind of a fun process.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about, I understand that you were into monster trucks.
Well, yeah, I've got a big history in a lot of motorsport type stuff, but I just kind of fell into this. It wasn't really like a planned thing. One day I was like, "Oh, I'm going to restore cemeteries." But in Jackson Township, I used to be the township trustee, and we had Bear Creek Cemetery there. And I
Mm-hmm.
had tried to get somebody to come in and restore it years ago, and had quotes, and could never get anybody to show up. And so, as we were trying to figure out how to pay bills one month, it hit me in the middle of the night. I went, you know what? I wonder if the trustee still has that folder and has all that information, because
Mm-hmm.
that's probably something I could do. So I called the township trustee, and she said, "Yeah, I still have all the records that you had laid out, you know." And I says, "Well, how about I come in and do the project for what they had quoted us years ago?" And she says, "Well, if you think you can do that." And I said, "Yep." So that was my first go at this deal. I went over there and looked at everything and went, "Wow, I hope I didn't get myself into something I can't do."
Mm-hmm.
And but did a lot of research. Went and took a couple little day. There's a lot of little workshops that different historian people put on,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to a couple of those and learned a little bit of the techniques of things with rock, and just a lot of it you just learn as you go.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that one, and as I was working on that, I started getting other townships calling me saying, "Hey, we can't get anybody to do this. Would you be interested?" So it was a pretty busy summer that summer. So we kind of moved around and did quite a bit. And Mary's been wanting to do this one for years, and I just live down the road. So when I drive by this, it always bugs me because I've always seen how bad it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the one with Bear Creek out there, it was off the beaten trail enough that nobody even knew it was there.
Right.
But this one here, there's a lot of frontage here. So when you drive by, you're always seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Mary said, "Hey, I'm going to try to get some funding and let's see if we can get something done," I was like, "Man, that'd be fantastic."
We're so lucky, fortunate that you're able to do this for
Yep.
us
Yeah.
and keep these people alive.
Yes. And that's the sad part, is everybody out here has a story.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everybody lived a life. Everybody had a story. If we could just get back in a time machine or something and go back and actually visit with these people, would be so fantastic to actually hear some of the stories.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter sometimes how famous somebody was at the time. Once they're gone for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, their story a lot of times gets forgotten.
That's right.
Unless they made it into history books while they were still alive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
That's right. So tell us about some of the work that
Mhm.
you've done
Well,
with these tombstones.
you have several different kinds of rock. The
Mhm.
earlier stuff was made out of a lot of sandstone and limestone and things like that.
Mhm.
So a lot of those, and a lot of them were made out of marble.
Mhm.
So some of them get real brittly. They call it sugaring, where they just basically crumble and fall apart. So it gets to be a real challenge on how to put them back together. Some of them are broken. You can't hardly read them. So some of them I'll take a piece of either marble or granite that I might have from scraps from a company that does countertops. I get some of their scraps, and then I'll try to make a piece to fit the back of them. And sometimes I'll try to rebuild them like that. But you got to get the bases leveled. In the early days, they buried everybody in a wooden box. So as it would decay, the ground will cave in, and usually the monument will fall in on them. So you not only died, but then you get crushed later on by your own monument. So you kind of might not have wanted a big monument. But so we have to go back and level them. Nowadays, everything's done with concrete. They dig a big hole, they put a footer in, they have you actually in a vault. So there's really no settling nowadays. But the DNR is kind of over all of this. And the DNR with the townships are the ones supposed to be overlooking all this stuff. And they really don't want you to modernize things. They really want them to be kind of left historical. So we use gravel like what they would have done. And then, we get the bases leveled and then we start rebuilding the monument. So, and then a lot of cleaning gets involved. We use a D2, they call it. That's what's recommended by the DNR and by like Arlington Cemetery. It's called D2 cleaner, and it actually cleans more over time. You can't get them real clean when you first start. You almost have to just pre-soak them and let them. Over time, they'll get cleaner as the rain washes them off and stuff.
So the Department of Natural Resources is involved.
Yes,
quite a bit.
Yeah. Ultimately, the townships or whoever was the caretaker of the town of the cemeteries is ultimately responsible for them. So a lot of them have been neglected because the townships didn't really see a need or have anybody on them about doing it. It's kind of sad, but people move on. And in this day and age, the society is so different. I don't know if it's because of the haunted movies and all these scary movies, but a lot of the younger people are really wigged out about coming out to cemeteries. They get real weird about it. And then they tell me, I can't believe you're working in a cemetery. Isn't that spooky? And it's like, no, there's nothing spooky about it,
No.
So I don't know. I hope that, that stigma could get over at some point, but a lot of young people get wigged out about cemeteries.
And that may happen here.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. So take us on a tour of the restoration.
Okay, well, this one here was actually toppled over. I've got it in my records of who it was, but I can't tell you right now by looking at it because it's so hard to read. But a lot of these were, toppled over or buried in the dirt. And we've gotten them back, dug back up. These ones were actually broken in half, so we was able to rebuild them and get them back, and we try to get them in the place where we find them. Sometimes we'll line them up a little bit better in line because back in the day they weren't mowing, so a lot of times they would be out here in the weeds, and they normally would have a headstone and a footstone to show where the body was at. And a lot of times the footstones get hit by mowers and stuff. So a lot of times those get thrown along the fence row or get thrown up next to a tree. And we try to lay them kind of along with the headstone if we have them. But some of them we didn't even know who they were until we got them, uprighted and cleaned. Some of these were toppled. This one here would have been a newer granite. All of your newer tombstones are typically granite because the material is so much harder. They'll last almost forever, where the early days they were sandstone or limestone or maybe marble, and the weather would deteriorate them. But this one here was laying down in the dirt. There's still some dirt stains on it from the way it was laying, but it cleaned up really nice, and it'll get cleaner as time goes. So this one here, we found this Monroe, I think that's who that is. This one was in several pieces. You can see we've got it all back together, but I don't have it uprighted yet because we're still missing this bottom piece, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to upright this one. It needs to be uprighted, but sometimes it's a challenge figuring out how to do it. So sometimes I have to just walk away from it, leave it set for a few days while I think about different ways of maybe making it work. I really don't like seeing, you go into some cemeteries that have been restored from a few years back, and you'll see guys have took pieces of steel angle iron, things like that, and screwed them to these things and used them. I kind of don't like seeing that because then it turns rusty, and it's just, I'd rather try to fix rock with rock if we can, because I think it's just better for longevity. I'd like to see this place still be good, way past our days, a lot of times people ask, where do I first start? At this cemetery, I started with this Riley Ricketts. It was right out here by the road, and he was a veteran. And he actually had two markers. He had one that was a military marker, and you can see it was broke up too, but we got it fixed. And the family, I think, at some point had put a nicer, newer monument. But normally on a project like this, I try to get started closest to the road because of the people that are interested. If they drive by and they see things are happening, they go, hey, we need to stop. And I always enjoy when they stop and want to visit because you learn a lot. You know, sometimes you'll find out people are related to these, you know, and so that's always fun.
So the last time I was here, which was a couple of weeks ago, you had what I call clamps.
Okay.
On Riley Ricketts stone.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like you had put the epoxy on it. That's the normal process?
It depends on the style of rock. That's an old marble one, and there's a special epoxy I use. But yeah, typically to get everything lined up, I have to use clamps and little boards, and you know, you'll epoxy it and you clamp it. Sometimes you got to make a kind of an A-frame out of 2x4s sometimes. I mean, you just, every day is different out here. Sometimes you'll see stuff that looks like you're trying to build a structure, you know, because you got to brace it, especially on days like today. We've got a lot of wind. So, you know, if you epoxied something like that and a wind gust comes up, it might ruin everything you did. It might even break it worse. So, you know, you just kind of got to plan ahead a little bit.
So tell us about your company and your website.
Okay, well, the website, we thought maybe we'd get into selling some new monuments, but really don't have much call for newer monuments. There's too many big guys in the industry. We kind of more or less specialized in doing this restoration stuff. So, and it's kind of enjoyable. You know, you're dealing with people that maybe aren't, I mean, most of the people that when you're restoring things are happy that you're doing it because it's an ancestor. You know, and at the present time, if you're doing a monument for somebody that was just lost, you know, you have to deal with a lot of emotions a lot of times, and that's not, you know, I thought maybe we could handle it, but we really don't get much call for it, so it doesn't really matter. But this has been very enjoyable doing the restoration stuff, and we've got some videos on the website that shows us doing some stuff at Bear Creek, but you know, it takes so much time to do the videoing and the editing that we don't really stay caught up on it like we should.
So how can people find you?
Either sacredhopemonument.com or by the phone, 260-570-6792, or, you know, other various ways. People like you, they can contact you. They can contact Mary Hollowball Deal, the county historian. She can kind of set them in the right direction, but I'm pretty easily accessible.
Oh, well, thank you so much,
Yep, thank you.
Jeff, for
Appreciate
talking
you
to
guys.
us.
Yep.
And this is Jeff Cook, who's a co-owner, along with his daughter, Daisy. And thank you so much for what you're doing for the cemeteries in DeKalb County. So we'll see you again with another episode.